Here we are at the EXP firing range where we're test firing our new Buster style weapon. As you can see, we can look around, fire projectiles, and if we hold down, we can charge up a powerful charge beam. So let's have a closer look at how we set this weapon up and how it's going to work. Here I made a prefab of my blaster, which I made in Blender. The first thing I want to highlight is that by default, the transform of this object is facing forward on the Z axis. You'll notice in the transform its position and rotations on X, Y, and Z are all 0. The scale is fine, that's the size I modeled it in Blender. But the reason why this is important is we want to fire our projectiles in the forward transform. And to do that, we'll instantiate objects from the fire point, which is an empty game object that I positioned in front of the blaster. And when we instantiate them, we're going to use this game object's transform. I'm going to say that we're going to fire them in the transform.forward direction, which is positive on Z. So do make sure that it is by default on Z. As an added little effect, I created another empty game object in the same position as the fire point called charge effect. And what this is, it is simply just a particle system, particle emitter, that will radiate and scale up and expand as we charge the shot and then become inactive when we release. It's a nice touch, it really looks quite good. And it's simple too. I'll show you how to make this particle emitter in this video also. And that's all for the weapon setup. Now, let's go ahead and create your weapon controller script. Mine's called Blaster, and go ahead and open it up. Okay, so for the most part, the script is exactly the same as that of our 2D charge shot video, except with some changes to accommodate for this being a 3D project. Like before, we'll have a public transform fire point, the point where we're going to shoot the projectiles. The projectiles are these public game objects here, the beam and the charge beam. And we also want a public game object, the charge effect, that we can turn off and on when we're charging. When we are shooting, we want to have a shot speed, public float shot speed, how fast we want these shots to be fired, and a public bool is charging, just so we can control when we are and aren't charging. How long is it going to take for us to successfully pull off a charge attack? Well, we have two serialized floats here, a charge timer and a charge time. Let's imagine our charge timer 2 seconds. The charge timer, when we hold down the button, will count up, and once it reaches 2, then we'll successfully shoot a charge shot. That's it for the variables. Let's go down to our shooting method. So we have two methods here, void shoot and void charge shoot. They are practically the same, except we're changing the game object we want to instantiate. So let's take a look. In our shoot method, we have our game object shot, and that will equal instantiate the beam game object from the fire point.position and the fire point.rotation. We want to get the rigid body of that beam. So the rigid body shot RB equals the shot that we've instantiated dot get component rigid body. And we want to apply a force to that rigid body. So we'll say that the shot RB dot add force, and this is where one of those changes comes in. In the brackets here, it'll be the fire point dot forward, as we are facing forward on the Z axis, multiplied by the shot speed by force mode dot impulse. Previously, this was force mode 2D, but as you can see, it is now 3D. And just for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to destroy the shot game object after 1 second. That's all we need for our shooting. For the charge shot, we are copy and pasting this code below. What we're changing here is the game object we're instantiating. So we're going to instantiate a new game object called charge shot, and that will be the instantiation of the charge beam object. And the rest is exactly the same, except we'll change the name of the charge rigid body, of course, just so we haven't got any conflicts. In addition, we want to say that we are no longer charging when we release this charge shot, and we want to reset our charge timer back to 0. So that is our shooting methods done. Next, let's apply this to inputs. If we scroll up here, when we shoot, that'll be the left mouse button. We'll say if input.get mouse button down 0, then we want to call on the shoot method. Then, if we want to hold down and charge, we'll say if input.get mouse button 0. So this is the moment we click, this is the moment we hold down. We'll say that is charging is true, we'll increment the charge timer plus equal to time.delta time. In addition, we'll say that if is charging is equal to true and the charge timer is greater than 0.07, then the charge effect.setActive is true. So after we've initiated the charge, after 0.07 of a second, the charge effect will become active. When we release, of course, we'll say that if the input.getMouseButtonUp 0 and the charge timer is greater or equal to the charge time, then call upon the charge shoot, and we want to set the charge effect as inactive. Charge effect.setActive false. Else, if we're holding down and we release before the charge time, we don't want to execute a charge shot. So we'll say that else if the input.getMouseButtonUp 0 and the charge timer is less than the charge time, then reset the charge timer to 0 and set inactive the charge effect because we haven't held it down long enough. That is all we need for the charge shot. As you can see, like I said, exactly the same as that of our 2D tutorial, except a few minor changes to accommodate for this being 3D space. Hit save and let's head back into Unity. Alright, back in Unity now. Go ahead and drag your weapon controller or blaster script to your desired weapon. And before we go ahead and fill it out in the inspector, let's make sure that our projectile prefabs have rigid bodies applied, else we won't be able to apply force to them. If you haven't, just go to your prefabs folder, double click your desired projectiles, and just make sure that you've added a rigid body with the gravity ticked off, and you're set to go. Of course, add any colliders if you wish, as your project desires. Now we can go ahead and fill out our inspector. So go ahead, drag and drop your fire point in there, your desired projectile in the beam slot, and your charge beam also. And we want to add that charge effect, which we'll create in just a moment. Our shot speed, I think 20 is good enough for this demo's purpose. And I've set my charge time to 2 seconds. So, when you're ready, let's go ahead and create a brand new charge effect. On the Buster weapon, right click, select effects, particle system, and you'll get something like this. You can see it's already facing forward because the projectiles are traveling forward. Go ahead and name it whatever you like. I'm just going to keep mine as particle system for now. And let's go ahead and tinker about in the settings here. We want the duration of this particle system to just be 1 second. So go ahead and change that 5 to 1. We want it to be looping. We also want the start speed to be 0 also. We don't want these particles traveling forward. We want them to just stay where they are. And you'll get this nice cloud, this orb-like effect, which is starting to look like what we want. Then for the color, I suggest clicking this little arrow here and selecting gradient. Click the color box and it'll bring up this menu here. What you can do is select 2 colors you wish this to transition between. I'm going to go to the right here, click this little arrow, and I'm going to choose a strong yellow color like that. There we are. And you can adjust the slider to your desire. I'm going to go with something like that. Nice little balance between the white and the yellow. That's all we need to do in the particle system at the top. Now let's go down to shape. Here you'll see that the shape is currently set to a cone. We want to change this to sphere. We also want to change the radius of this sphere from 1 to 0.1. And you can see our weapon's hiding most of it, but that's kind of collected those particles together. What you can do is you can go ahead and just move that to the position of our fire point just there. And I think that is looking pretty good. What I would like to show you, if you go and select your particle system and hit stop, then press play, you'll see that the particle system grows and gathers in size, which gives us this nice scaled look. So we don't have to write a scale over time script, which is really, really handy. So let's go ahead and hit stop. Drag your new particle system in the desired slot in the inspector. I'm going to stick with my default one that I created off camera. And now let's go ahead and hit play. And now you should be able to fire projectiles with the left mouse button, hold it down, see that charge effect come into play, release, and fire a powerful charge shot. And there we are, guys. That's how you can create a charge shooter mechanic for your 3D project. If you found this tutorial useful, please let us know in the comments. Your support motivates us to create bigger and more ambitious tutorials like our Star Fox 64 inspired rail shooter series coming very, very soon. I wish you all the best on your projects. We appreciate you stopping by, and we'll see you next time. Take care.